I know what you're saying.
Good to see you. How do we know each other? I don't know your face. I think that's it. Are you from Powell? Our senator on the advisory board?
Kelly.
The one that's been stirring up you and Larry have been.
Yeah, me and Larry.
Good.
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 Where's the flag?
Good. Well, somebody's got to do it.
And she's sitting right next to me.
What?
She wants to move.
Great. We got actual pictures of her last Thursday. It's going to be a little girl who's got some 3D pictures, and I've been meaning to run up here from on the computer yet, so everything. They can count 5 fingers on the hand, because she was sitting there kind of waiting at us.
I thought that was Gailey doing it.
Next to me.
Excited. Maddie's really excited. She was wanting her sister bad.
You need to come to that.
I wasn't planning on it because I've been involved with a couple.
But then after.
What's the age difference between you and your brother?
Like 4 years.
Okay.
Not too bad.
Okay, well, I was going to plan to
Everybody is.
You want to see
Will there be some fireworks?
slight fireworks. That'll be more than you've seen, or maybe in a lifetime. It's going to be.
Tree, you know what I'm saying? Is it
And all
really?
your questions are good for someone.
Who's going to be on the hot seat? Brett coming in and.
Brad, and Gary Moss, and I think Whipple.
You ready?
All
right, Bryce.
We're good to go. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know this guy, that's like I did when I first showed up. His name's Dallas Mount. He's the University of Wyoming livestock extension educator. I almost said an educator extension, which would have been backwards. But anyway, he served the southeast part of Wyoming since 2001. Him and his family own a small irrigated grass farm near Wheeling, and today he's going to present a structure for profit-oriented decision making.
All right. Thank you, Bryce.
Save a little.
Appreciate being here.
I'll give him stuff for you.
All right. You're going to stay, aren't you?
Yeah.
All right, good.
Get it out of your way. Make it easy.
Good. I'm glad to be here this morning. If I seem like I'm buzzing on coffee a little bit, I hit the road at 4 this morning from Wheatland and just flew right in here, so glad to be here. What do you think if I crack that open?
I'll be fine.
People wondering why they might be more inclined to come in. I'm excited to spend some time with you guys today. I'm excited to get to know you a little bit. I hope this is a conversation rather than just me talking to you. It makes it a lot more fun that way, and I think a little more interesting. How many of you are students here at the college? Okay. All right, most of you study in agriculture in some facet, ag business, animal science, range. What kind of things do you study?
Ag production.
Ag production, ag communications,
Ag business.
ag business. Awesome. Okay. Well, I think what we're going to touch on today will probably relate to a little of us. The rest of you are livestock producers, farmer ranchers from the area. Is that right? Okay. I see some heads nodding. Good. All right. I know a few familiar faces in the room, so good to see a few of you again. Okay. Whose ranch is it easier? I'm going to use the word ranch. Farmer ranch, we'll use it interchangeably today. Whose ranch is easier to see the problems on, yours or your neighbor's?
Fence is always greener.
What's that?
The fence is always greener on the other side.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Well, we're going to pick on your neighbor's ranch today. Let's call it, I've always called my example ranch the Lug Nut Ranch, and I'm not too creative, so. So we'll talk about the Lug Nut Ranch today. Okay, the Lug Nut Ranch, let me just describe it to you here, and then I want you to help me diagram it. They're about a 300 cow ranch. They keep all their calves over and run them as stockers. They put up enough hay to feed their cow herd in a normal year, which is about a ton of hay to the cow, and they graze out about 9 to 10 months a year, sometimes 11 months a year if the weather's good. Come back and regraze hay meadows at home. There's a couple generations on the ranch that are working on the ranch, and it's mostly grazed. There's some rented ground, BLM ground, Forest Service ground, but it's mostly deeded land they graze on. So that's the way the ranch is. In most years they get by okay. They make enough to pay their expenses, pay their living expenses for the two families that are full time on the ranch, and get by okay. But it's 2012 this year. I assume you guys had a drought up here too, right? You did? Not that bad.
Dryland.
Dryland did?
Yeah, but just zero rain, that's all.
Zero, right?
Yeah.
What is your precip on your non-irrigated land? It's pretty 5 to 8, so the drought is almost normal in some ways. Okay, all right. Yeah, we were in real tough shape this year, and I know most of the state was too. So let's assume the Lug Nut Ranch had a pretty tough year this year and maybe grew only half of what they normally would on their dry land ground, and put up maybe about half as much hay as they normally would. So they ended up having to buy some hay to keep the cows together, and they went ahead and culled pretty heavy too. So you guys help me out. What enterprises is this ranch involved with? What are the different businesses on this ranch, as I just described it? Okay, awesome. So we're going to call one cow calf. Is that fair? Okay. All right. What was another one you mentioned? Stalkers. Okay. Describe what you mean by that, just in case. Okay. So those calves that we're keeping after we wean them, those are our stalker enterprise, right? Okay. What was another one you mentioned? Hay. Okay. This ranch puts up hay. That's an enterprise, isn't it? Any other enterprises on this ranch?
Coal cows.
Coal cows. Okay. You'd be part of this group here, right? They're a cash income source to that cow calf business. Any other enterprises this ranch does?
You say they have a BLM permit, it'd be grass.
Okay.
Grass would be an enterprise.
All right, and they have deeded land too, don't they? So whether it was BLM or grass or anything, I'm going to call that land. Okay.
Do they rent extra?
Just some little pieces of state land and things like that, but not anything reasonable for private leases.
Ecotourism, right?
What's that?
Ecotourism.
Ecotourism, all right. So off of this land business, we could have a whole variety of different enterprises on here. From maybe there's a pipeline, maybe there's a gravel pit, maybe there's some cell phone towers or anything like that. For now, let's just roll all that into the land so we don't get too far off, okay? So from this point forward, we're gonna ignore non-ag enterprises on the ranch and just say, we're just gonna focus on the ag operation. Not that I'm saying you shouldn't pursue those enterprises, because sometimes those can be the most lucrative ones. If I can sidetrack a little bit, we just finished our ranch practicum school in Lingle and in Casper. And we had a gentleman in our Lingle school that we really started talking about this land enterprise. One thing he did, he ranches just west of Glendo, as you're going down the interstate there on the west side. And they have a pretty good gravel source and they're located right there next to the interstate. So he said, you know what, we should really have a gravel pit. And this was probably 15 years ago. And went and talked to a few different developers and nobody was really interested in going through the whole permitting process. So he started doing that himself. He started, getting all the DEQ permits in line, going out there and he acted as a general contractor and brought in contractors to start developing this pit. And lo and behold, now, about 10 years later, he subleased that out to another operator, and he said this last year, 1 month, there was a gross income of $100,000 in 1 month just from the gravel pit operations on the ranch. I thought that was pretty. He said it may not happen forever. He said I'm looking at this as a blessing in the short term, but he said, boy, that time spent developing that enterprise, if you look at return for time invested, was huge. All right, sorry to segue a little bit there, but okay. So there's our Lug Nut Ranch. Where do you think most of the time invested on this ranch goes to? Just with your idea of the size of these different enterprises on there.
Okay.
Cow calf, yeah. I think that's probably right. we might look at the returns from each of those enterprises. I've got that worked up. We could talk about what their 2012s looked like as well as 11s. But let's leave that right there and let's talk about the people on this ranch. There's Jake, and Jake is married to Jane. Okay. Jake has a sister. It was Jennifer. I'm going to get things mixed up. Oops. I can't write and talk at the same time. Yeah, all right. And Jake has a sister, Juanita. Okay. I got to keep all the first letters the same so I keep the generations the same. And these two have 3 kids. They have John, Jane, and Joe. Okay? John is married to Betty. Jane is married to Bill. And they each have some kids. Okay? So here's the story of this ranch family. Jake and Juanita grew up on the ranch, and Jake watched his dad build the place, put it together, worked hard his whole life, really just put all of his time and effort into this. Jake's now in his 60s, and just about 10 years ago is when Dad health took him out of the picture. And so Jake has been the decision maker on the ranch for the last 10 years, but is definitely, through sweat equity and the time on the ranch, earned his place on the ranch through hard work. John and Betty live on the ranch. John is the middle son. John's the middle child. Jane's the oldest, and then Joe's the youngest. And John went off to school, graduated high school there, went off to school, got some certifications in diesel mechanic, decided that's what he really enjoyed doing. Was going to go into that, and then Dad said, you know what, come back here and help me out on the ranch. So John and Betty have come back to the ranch. John is pretty much the weight puller. How are you?
Sorry being late.
That's all right.
And 100-mile-an-hour winds are blew shit all the hills.
Oh boy, sounds like fun. So John is definitely the majority of the labor on the ranch. Works alongside his dad Jake. Right now is just been playing that role of labor pretty much, and they've been there for about the 10 years that Jake's been the decision maker on there in that role. Of course, grew up on the ranch, grew up working in it that whole time. Jane is married to Bill. They live down the road, work for a company ranch. He's a unit foreman on that. They come home on weekends and help, do brandings, those kind of things if they need to. And then there's Joe. Joe's kind of an interesting character. He went off and joined the Peace Corps and traveled around the world and has just come back to the ranch, and he's in his early 20s, and he's decided he wants to develop a natural beef business as part of the ranch and carve out his spot there and pursue that. So that's the short story of this family. Okay, here's a little more in depth on this. The ranch is worth about $10 million. Okay, Juanita got married, moved off, now lives in Denver. Her husband died. She's now single, and she's a 50% owner in the ranch. Okay, she needs some source of income, so she expects to be paid a fair cash market rental rate for her share of the ranch. Okay, and she's willing to work with Jake on that and be reasonable about it, but that's really how she's going to support her life, okay, is through some cash income from the ranch. So she went and saw an accountant in town, and he says, well, your share of the ranch is worth about $5 million. If we were looking at this as a business, we could expect a return on assets of that $5 million. So what do you guys think would be a fair return on assets of her share of the ranch?
6.
5, 6, okay. All right, let's go with that. So the accountant told her 7 or 8, but she said, oh, come on, this is my brother, he's scraping by. So she's going to ask for a 5% return. So somebody pull a calculator and punch that out for me.
5% of 10 million?
Her share is $5 million.
250.
250,000?
Okay, all right. So she's going to get $250,000 a year as her share of return on assets from her ownership in this ranch. Okay. Jake is part of the older generation. Okay, and I have a lot of respect for that generation. We oftentimes call it the greatest generation. Boy, hardworking, devoted, honorable, honest. but maybe could be considered not really accused of oversharing a lot, okay? You know, being real open. So Jake has, and Jennifer's helping him, you know, she does the financials of the ranch, does a lot of the bookkeeping for it. But they really haven't been real open with the next generation about the financial position of the ranch. For the last year, they weren't able to make their payment to Juanita. He called Juanita and just said, hey, we had a tough year. She said, you know what? Don't worry about it. I've got some in reserve. We'll be okay this year. Well, here we are, 2012 happened, same thing, okay? So it's starting to get a little tough, and you can feel it. Yes, sir?
I don't know, it just would seem to me that just because that value is there, that there is not the liquidity to support this other person,
Which person do you think is
the sister.
the sister? Okay.
And that it needs to be based on whatever income, that they can't go back.
Okay.
Is that?
I think that's a fair statement. I think we're going to have a discussion about that. I think everything we're talking about here, I'm just throwing it out, kind of building a framework, because this is what we're going to spend our time thinking about, is how to solve your neighbor's problems here. All right. So that's the situation. I think how do you guys think, what's going on here? Okay, if he's in his early 60s, he's in his early 30s, let's say, and they're married with young children. Okay. So somebody tell me what's going on in John's head. Rusty, what's going on in John's head?
I'm still thinking he's gonna take over the place.
Okay. All right.
He's thinking he's one there working, he's gonna.
Sure. What do you think? How do you think Betty's feeling?
Probably not getting enough
Yeah,
income for their family
Okay.
and their young kids coming up.
Okay. What else?
He's doing all the work, and there's other people all wanting their goodies.
Yeah. Yeah. What else is she interested in too besides?
Well,
Besides,
I would
yeah.
think that, you know, if they have an interest and stake in the ranch, they want to feel like they're working towards making themselves something, not just making their aunt some money.
Mhm.
So, I mean, they would probably want to run their own cows or start branching off in their own direction,
Mhm.
where it becomes their place and not
Yeah.
someone else's.
How much do they really know about what goes on between the sister and them? They don't even know.
I think they're aware, you know, certainly know her ownership in the ranch, and they know there's some cash rent going over there for that part. Really not, I don't think they're very aware of this recent situation and the stresses there. Maybe have some inkling of those things, but really haven't been sat down and shared with the details.
But she's looking beyond the wage that they're getting today. That's what
Yeah.
She's looking for.
Probably continuity of lifestyle for a ranch, raising kids.
Yeah. Okay, I think you guys are hitting on it. So I think that sets the stage pretty well on there. Let me give you a little more information on the business side of the ranch. Okay, if we actually sat down and pulled up his books for this year. Okay. All right, that's all right, thanks. Here's what their books look like, and what we're going to show you here is essentially a unit cost of production breakdown of enterprises by ranch. Rob and Rusty and some of these guys have gone through the ranch practicum with us, and so this is these businesses that we talked about. There's the land business. If we cash leased out this land business, just said, hey, this thing will run this many cows for this many months. This is what this land business would be worth, right around $100,000. Okay. That land business has expenses, land taxes, pipeline, fence upgrades, those kind of things. So the land business returned about $41,000 in 2012. Okay, this is the year we just finished out. We just closed the books on that. That land business normally would do almost double that, but because of the drought, we devalued the land business. So that's a discussion for a different day, but the drought is really an impact on your land business. If you choose to keep your cows and feed them, that's a different decision. But there's what our land business did. Okay, our cows, we made the choice to keep the majority of the cow herd intact during this year. So we sold off about 10% of the cow herd and used a lot of that money to buy hay for the cows. So we essentially doubled our hay input on the cows from a normal year. The cow business this year lost $84,000. Okay? mainly because of that decision. Normally, this is a break-even cow business. Stockers this year, we ran our calves, we held them over in the fall from weaning time, roughed them out through the winter time, gave them a little bit of protein supplement, ran them over into the spring, and we saw that drought coming around the 1st of June, and we pulled the trigger on those calves. Okay, what were markets doing around 1st to middle of June? Okay. Yeah, they were just starting to die. Okay, that drought signal, that red light was starting to really flash right around that time. So stockers were just starting to take a dive, but we got in on the front end of that, so they did pretty well. Stockers made 33,000, 34,000 if we average in that 7. Okay, in our hay business, we only put up half the normal hay we normally would. We valued that hay at $200 a ton, okay, that we did raise, but we had all this overhead, this machinery, for only half the production. So that really hurt our hay business. Our hay business lost $34,000 this year. So we look at all these things together. How'd the ranch do? It lost $44,000. That's essentially what our tax return is going to look like going into this year. Okay. Any questions on that? I went through those financials real quick. Do you guys understand how those are presented? We're going to get into that stuff a little bit here later on this afternoon if you come to that one. Okay, I'm going to pass these around. Everybody take at least 4 or 5 sheets off of each one of these deals. Pass them around here. Thought I had a whole stack of this.
You want different colored ones, or doesn't?
No, it doesn't matter. Just colors don't matter. Yeah. Shoot, I thought I had a whole pile of those. I might not have grabbed them all out of my box. I think we'll be all right with those. If we, so we might just take 2 or 3 of them. Yeah. Hope everybody has a pin on them. What I want you to do when you get your sheets is, knowing what you know about this ranch, in the 10 minutes we've sat here and talked about this ranch and how they're laid out, what their financial condition is in this year, what their family structure is in this year, I want you to write on one of those sheets of paper, one idea, and tear them off. But here's the question. What's the biggest challenge? What is the biggest challenge this ranch is facing? What's the biggest challenge this ranch is facing? Okay? And now you might just say 2012 drought, okay? That might be it. You might say some things from that side of the board. So just, and everybody give me, 2 or 3 or 4 of those sheets. One idea per sheet, okay? Yeah, I'm gonna come around and collect them. So just make a stack on your desk there and we'll pass them to one side. So what's the biggest challenge this ranch is facing? So I've got more of these, so if you got more ideas, sure. I'll be glad to give you more.
Move your mouse one time.
Okay.
It's from time out on you.
All right. You know what, I think we'll just leave it off. We could come back to it if we need to. But
So we're supposed to put down 1?
yeah, well, 1 per sheet. And make,
Oh, just keep.
yeah, just keep making sheets. Yeah.
keep making-
Keep making. I'll come around and collect them when you get a set of them going here. And we'll. You got a stack of them, hand them over to. Now we're going. Okay. I'm going to start sticking these up. If it has to do with the family side, I'm going to put it over here. If it has to do with the financials, the production side, I'm going to put it over here. Awesome, good. Good ideas here. Some things we didn't talk too much about. smart board. I'll stick them right here.
You can, sure, I'll just tell them it was you.
Kay said I could. All right. Thanks, guys. This is great. Okay. Andrew, would you help me out? Andrew, would you help me out? Can you take these and stick them up for me? Stick them if they're keeping the family ranch, wants to be there. Family side over there, production, and the profit side over there. Thanks. All right, you guys are getting involved here. I love it. How are things at the Lug Nut Ranch?
Not yet.
Tense? Yeah, is there some stuff going on both financially and family side? Is this atypical of family operations, family business operations? I see a lot of heads saying no. Okay. Okay. I think this is maybe more typical than not of these kind of things. Some of these challenges this ranch is facing. Is there easy solutions to these problems? Which is easier to solve? Everybody's pointing over here. Yeah, I think you're right. There's some probably easier solutions over here that we could deal with.
But it ain't gonna happen because of that.
These kind of both stress each other out, don't they? This one's causing problems with this, and I think if we dealt with some of these things, we could start to deal a little easier with some of these things. That's my guess.
Well, personally,
Yeah.
I think it's really simple. She's trying to get a gross value of her ranch
Okay.
every year.
Okay?
If she wants a gross value, she should go cash in for $5 million and say we're selling it.
Okay?
Otherwise, she should take her profits and expect that when they decide they're gonna sell it or turn it over to the next generation, she'll get her $5 million back out of it, or whatever the appreciation of the ranch is.
She
She should get her profits,
But
not
what
a
does
gross
Jake do
value.
then if she
She's
says
gotta look at
great?
the appreciation of the
Right.
value of the ranch,
Because that's
making up that
included.
$250K.
Exactly.
But she's all for that. She comes to Jake and says, I want my $5 million and you can have the ranch. Where does Jake come up with $5 million cash?
He's gotta find another investor.
No,
You've got the
Rice
same
Ranch,
problem.
Rice Ranch and Sheridan, Panel
Wants
Ranch
to
and
invest in the
Hewlett.
ranch this
Well,
year.
a lot
You can go through every town.
agricultural land is worth
It
it.
seems to me though, I think as somebody was hitting on is that she has made her, that ranch was settled by Grandpa before Jake, and had a value of maybe $100,000. Now it's worth $10 million. That's her growth, that's her profit.
Okay, so it's,
Has to
That's
consider-
her
Was it 10
return.
million a land valuation?
That's the return.
10 million is the valuation of the ranch.
Okay.
Okay, somebody came out and did an appraisal on the ranch.
Not on the business.
Not on business, that's right, just the value of it.
And that $250K she made, even in the drought year, she already made it on the appreciation of value of the ranch.
Okay,
She's already made it.
but it's not liquid. She needs something to live on.
Exactly.
She's gotta pay her, she lives in Denver, she's gotta pay her rent.
Yeah.
She needs some liquid. Yeah.
Regardless of what the value of the ranch is or anything else, when you lease a ranch, it doesn't matter if it's for family or anybody else, you lease it based upon a set amount of what the ranch is worth leasing.
Okay.
You know, you can do separate,
Yeah,
different types of deals, but it shouldn't matter what the ranch is actually valued at, it's what the lease is valued at.
okay. Interesting perspective. I like it. I think you're hitting on something here we're gonna get onto.
And that value is not representative of that value.
Okay,
That value is divorced from this value because that's from guys from Texas and
okay,
Denver who are willing to pay that to grab that.
yeah. Okay, so we talked about the land business, and that's essentially the grass value, the cash lease value of just the ag production side of the ranch. And we, in a drought year, came up with 41,000 positive. I'll tell you, in a non-drought year, that number would probably be around 120,000 to the positive side. So that, I hear what you're saying is maybe that number should be based more on this value than that value. Let me ask you this.
Still a 1% return on the land value.
Okay, let me ask you this.
It's not the bid highest bid.
Taking you guys out of the seats that you're in, okay, as ag producers, if you're sitting in her accountant's chair and she's sitting on a $5 million asset, is it unreasonable for her to expect a 5% return on an asset?
No, it's not.
If you count it, if you put it correctly.
If it's a
it's
liquid
value,
asset.
But not liquidity.
Yeah.
There's no liquidity in
There's
that.
not a lot of liquidity. Okay,
If I was her accountant, I'd tell her to sell it.
okay. So here's what
Something else.
I think maybe there's some fairness in challenging her expectations here. I think there's some fairness in that, absolutely. I also think she has some expectations of realizing some income from her $5 million asset. Will you guys give her that? Okay.
Yeah, she can have 50% of the profits of the ranch, which right now is
But what
negative
control does she have
$45,000.
over the financial performance of the ranch? The management of the ranch caused a $44,000 cash
Yeah,
loss.
she should have his 50% ownership, 50% business management. She should have a say in how it is run. So
Okay.
if she says, we're no longer a cow-calf operation, we're now doing stockers, hay, and land, she has 50%.
Okay. So if she
standing
is
on that.
actively involved in the major management
I would
decisions of
hope
the
so.
ranch,
If you're
then she should
managing
have
the
a role
money,
in
you
it.
should be involved in it.
But if she's not actively involved in the management
Then she's
decisions
an
of the ranch,
idiot, and she gets negative
Well, yeah,
$42,000
part of
that
these
year.
losses are not so much management decisions. No manager in the world could control that hay, went up from
oh, I think they
20 a
absolutely
ton
are
to
management
200.
decisions. I think
But
they
if her
absolutely
value
are.
is only in the land, her return can only be half of what the land,
Okay,
half of the 41.
okay.
And that's one
Because she
thing,
doesn't own the
is,
cattle and all that.
well, that's part of the question, is her value in, that's net worth, her value is in that she owns 50% of the cattle, correct?
No.
She does not own any of the cattle,
does
she
not
owns
own any
land
cattle.
only.
She owns the land in front.
I agree,
Okay.
half the land.
All right. Yeah, I love these conversations because these are absolutely the kind of things that we folks, because there's differing viewpoints on these depending on whose chair you're sitting in, isn't there? And what your idea is on this. I mean, he probably went to her and said, we had a tough year. Okay, he probably didn't say we lost $44,000. Probably said we had a tough year. We can't do that. If we do that, it's going to put us out of business. If we make you that $250,000 cash payment, or we're going to have to find a way to cash in some kind of long-term asset to make that payment. Okay. Let's go back to some of your guys' stickies here. Thank you, Andrew, for helping me put these up. Juanita's is unrealistic. Juanita is insufficient due to liquidity. No communication within the family. Poor structure business, starting with Jake's dad. Business biggest challenge Race is facing is family dynamics for consistency. Need a family business plan. Keeping all the ranch that wants to be there. Succession planning. Family conflict. Return on investment is impossible. Less work ethic due to Jake's sister owning half. Okay, now we're on the production side. Herd diminishing, they're losing money, profitability, cash flow, cattle numbers, unrealistic financial expectations, cash flow, having a long-term financial plan. Those are awesome suggestions, guys. Here's my next question to you. And we don't have to do the stickies on this, but just think about it. Of the people that are in active management roles on this ranch, where do they spend their majority of their time? What do they spend doing with the majority of their time?
Operations.
Okay,
Yeah.
what kind of things?
Growing hay, cutting hay, feeding animals, processing animals, buying animals, selling animals.
Okay, so
Building
who are we
structures.
talking about primarily here? Jake, Jennifer, John, and Betty, right? Those are the people that are most actively involved in the ranch business. Okay. And maybe, assuming if there may be traditional roles in there, maybe it's just Jake and John. Okay, maybe Betty has a job in town, we didn't talk about that. Okay, could be Jake and Betty, who knows, okay? But those are the people we're thinking about. Would everybody kind of agree with that? That's where the majority of time is spent, is doing the operational work of the business. Okay. The reason I ask you that question is I think one of our greatest challenges in agriculture comes from where we spend our time. Okay? And Stephen Covey said you can spend your time in one of four quadrants. You can spend your time doing things that are important and urgent. Okay? So if you have something that's highly urgent and highly important, you're up here. Okay? Cows are out of water. We need to go out and break the water, fix the water trough. Because if we don't, within a couple days, we're going to have some dead cows. Okay? We can do things that are important but not urgent. okay? And then we can do things that are urgent and not important, and vice versa. Phone calls from salesmen sometimes can fall into this category, okay, all those kind of things. So you think about these 4 quadrants, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the saying is, live above the line, okay? Spend your time in those areas above this horizontal line here, in number 1 and 2. Where in agriculture do we spend most of our time? 4.
2.
Sometimes 4, sometimes 2, okay? I think that's probably where we do. I think one of our greatest challenges in agriculture is finding ways to pull our time back into this quadrant 1, doing things that are important but not urgent. And I guess I'd like to commend you guys for being here today, because that's exactly what you're doing. If you didn't come to this meeting today, the wheels of the ranch probably wouldn't fall off, okay? But yet I hope you see there's some value in coming to things like this, educational programs, so that you can take that value back to the ranch and apply it in whatever situation you're facing, okay? So that's what I think one of our greatest challenges is finding time to do those things in quadrant 1 that are important but not urgent, okay? Is there some important stuff that needs to be done here? Absolutely, okay? Is this urgent at the present moment? I don't know, if we went back a few years, we've been here 10 years in this thing. Was this urgent 3 years ago?
It hasn't been urgent for 10 years.
It hasn't been urgent for 10 years. At
The
some
more
point,
years she
is
doesn't
it going to
get a
get
check.
urgent?
But
The more years she doesn't get a check, the more urgent it will become.
Yeah,
The day John and Betty say we're out of here, it's urgent.
that's right.
Or the day Jake has a heart attack because he's getting to be on 65, 70 years old, it becomes urgent.
Yeah, so we need to deal with those things that are important but not urgent before they flop over into number 2. Just thinking about this year, at least in southeast Wyoming, the decisions I saw happen, according to the drought, was, I mean, that yellow light started coming on in April, May. By June, that thing was just flashing bright red. Drought, guys, drought. It's going to be a disaster year. And everybody just kept on, well, we'll figure it out at some point. You know, and here we are, $300 a ton hay. That's what we're having to pay to get hay in. Yeah, I mean, you think the decisions might be a little better early on in the disaster than they are later on in the disaster? Generally, that's the case.
Yeah, the people in Jake's generation, as he described it, don't take real well if their demise be discussed in advance.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. All right, let's get into this a little bit. What we have till 11:40. 11:40. Yeah. All right. So we've got. Help me keep on time if you wouldn't mind. Okay. Let me know if we're going. What I'd like to do with the rest of the time is let's talk about some strategies this ranch could use to deal with a lot of this stuff over here. Okay. I think this afternoon we're going to focus more on this side. If you come join me this afternoon. But for today, let's talk about this one over here. We've talked about Juanita a little bit, okay? Are her expectations unreasonable? Maybe they're a little high. Maybe if she were shown the financial performance of the ranch over a longer period of time, she might have a little bit better strategy from which to decide if her expectations are reasonable or not. Maybe she should cash out. Somebody suggested that. Find a way to take her piece and
I think a lot of people, it's easier to identify with Jake. But with Juanita, she would love to cash out. She can't. Jake keeps telling her, please don't force us. You know, Jake, John are able to stay on the farm and the ranch because Juanita's not forcing the sale. And a lot of times that's not, people don't identify with that side of it.
That's right.
Well, and the other thing that I think that people don't identify with, and it's a family thing, is this is Juanita, this isn't her inheritance, right? So her Jake's, I'm assuming, parents built this business, presumably from nothing, which is sort of our traditional story we like to tell. And they have this asset, and when they passed on, it was, and I'm sure they intended it to be, because they set it up 50-50, they intended it to be half of everything that we have is going to go to you, and half of everything we have is going to you. This is not some arbitrary thing. This is her half of the family legacy, her inheritance, and so it is meaningful. That, you know, when people say, oh, well, she's just not being nice, and, you know, that the parents intended for her to get half of what they had created in their lifetime, and for her to not get that in some way, you know, either through payments or being able to deal with that, is not what they had intended, or they would have structured it differently. And so I think that we often forget about that, and we're like, oh, it's so hard on Jake, it's terrible. But this is a person whose inheritance from their parents is wrapped up in this chunk of land.
But in reality, if the accountant would sit down with Jake and Jennifer and Anita and explain, this is the problem when you got people wanting cash rent for land. They don't understand that a good operator on the land increases the value of that land, and that Juanita having Jake there is protecting her investment. And that return has to be explained as how you're getting that return, and how, your father, Juanita's father, built it from 0 to 5 million was because he was a good steward of the land, and that there's got to be something given to Jake to steward her,
Investment.
Well, what she's going to inherit, her inheritance needs to be protected, or it loses value.
Well, in real estate in general, is that the highest and best use of the land, even a court, if it has to get in and make a decision about things like that, they'll use that. Is this the highest and best use of the land? The cap rate on this, the capitalization rate, is less than 0.5%. Less based on that 41,000 annual.
They're losing
0.5%. I mean, my rent houses are 7.5%, 8%. And so, maybe this land could be sold to Ted Turner or subdivided into another Copperleaf or whatever. If it could be done, and you might get a 2%. Well, that's 4 times better than what they're getting, and that would be my concern if I was hers. Well, if the ranch can't afford the land, then who can? And what control should we do with it? And they'll all scream, oh, but you can't break up Daddy's ranch, and she'll say, well, screw you, pay me.
Well, I've got a second short-term solution on
Okay.
one of these really bad years. She wants her money because she needs to live. Why don't we put it in a conservation easement? She gets 50% of it. That's cash in the hand.
50% of the value of the conservation
The
easement?
value of the conservation, we're talking a paid easement. It's a $10 million ranch. They're probably gonna pay you $4 million for it, maybe 3 or 4.
Mhm.
So there's $2 million she just put in her pocket that will pay her $250,000 for the next
Yeah.
couple of years.
Let's capture that under ideas over here. Conservation easement.
Because that would offset some of the hard times that the ranch is having, but still allow her to continue her investment, and it's still gonna allow the land value to go up. It won't be as high of a percentage, but it still will continue to go up.
I think it's worth investigating.
But still, even in a good year, there is no way that that
250 never
works.
works.
Never, it's never gonna,
Well, it's not taking into account appreciation on the land.
except
If you
for
back,
that.
if you back off a little bit on the 250 and say, hey, we're probably getting 3% appreciation on the land, now we're back down to 2% or something like that.
So I think she's willing to negotiate. Like Rick said, this ranch is in her heart. She grew up here, okay? She does not want to see the ranch business fall apart and for it to be developed into real estate. She might be very open to something like this. Okay, let's leave this one for a little bit. We'll come back to it, because everybody agrees that's something we need to deal with on this ranch, isn't it? Okay? Let's move down a generation. Let's think about these folks here, okay? John and Betty and Joe and Jane, and how they're relating to Jake. We talked a little bit about what was going on with the John and Betty deal, okay? What do you think, what's the decision point? There's gonna be some decision point there as they relate to Dad. First of all, let me ask you this question. What do Jake and Jennifer owe their kids, or their adult children?
Nothing.
Wow.
I like to hear that, that's good.
They've got half the ranch, okay? Jake and Jennifer have half the ranch.
Yes.
Okay.
Clarity,
There you go.
communication.
Yeah.
Clarity and communication, there you go.
Hey, they need to tell them they owe nothing.
Yeah, right.
Well, if they want to be fair and split it up 3 ways, that's fine, but since John and Betty are so involved in the ranch, in the interim, they need to offer John and Betty some way to continue going. And I would say, hey, every year you get 10 cows until they build up their own herd,
Okay.
or you can buy acreage of land from us, or
But
something.
see, they're
that
already
keeps them
getting
involved.
their income.
Right,
And that's
but,
what, Bill and
well,
Joe are
and that
saying,
would
you're getting
be,
your income.
well, that would
What
be,
do you want?
in lieu of getting your pay, you get to run 20 cows
But they
today.
can't live without them.
Well, they have cows, and now they have calves, and now they sell them, and they're in their own business.
Let's
Now
assume
it
they're
comes
paid
to
a small
businesses.
wage. It's maybe not fair market value.
With the calves, Jake and his cows and John and his cows, then you've got a battle.
Especially when the hay gets short.
Everybody's running
My
counts.
cows,
They owe them a plan.
They owe them a
They owe
plan.
them a plan.
Clarity
Yeah.
slash a plan. Yeah.
Well, they just need to keep it on a professional basis. If John and Betty are working there, then fine, John and Betty get a salary, period. Any side business they do is their own business. You can't cross-pollinate, it's gotta be very clear.
But Andrew, they've been working their tail off for $20,000 a year. Don't they deserve to inherit that ranch when it?
No.
Well, what was the deal made?
Because
There,
they're,
yeah, how
Did
did
they have an
That's the-
anticipation? Were they given a reason to expect to get part of it? They should
they've
have
No,
it
been
right.
living
I
there,
mean-
there's a value to them living there, there's a value to them using the ranch trucks. They're using the ranch presumably to raise some of their own stuff.
What do you think, Jane? How do you think what does she look at John and Betty? Does she
Were
look
they
at
out of the
that?
ranch? We missed a
They're,
story.
they're on a neighboring ranch working for a corporate ranch. He's the foreman of that.
So
And
they
they
have nothing
come
to
home
do with
and
this ranch
help out at
operation.
branding. She's a daughter, just like John's a son.
Okay.
I mean, how do they feel? They're sitting over there thinking, well, look at John and Betty over there. I mean, he, spends time with dad. They're obviously the heir apparent to the ranch.
But they're not. They're heir apparent to 1/3 of the ranch.
Maybe,
Unless
they're
their
not.
parents want to start a war.
I can throw one more monkey wrench that I actually ran into one time. Juanita goes and gets remarried.
I bet a third of them.
Juanita's husband has 2 kids.
Yeah.
She doesn't do a prenup, and Juanita dies, and now step cousins are 50% owner. And I ran into that one time when I was a
Boy, that
insurance
can create some interesting things.
Yeah.
I won't bother diagramming it there, but
Did
that's a
Juanita
whole
have
new.
kids?
What's that?
Did Juanita have kids?
She did not.
Oh, well, see, that's it. Run Juanita out.
It simplifies it. Yeah. All right, here's some
They
things
didn't check
I,
her food.
here's some things I think we've come up with, okay? I love this word. Somebody back there said that. That's awesome. I agree. If Jake owes these folks anything, it's clarity. Here's the plan. There is no room for you. Go somewhere else. I'm going to be here making the decisions on this ranch till the day they stick me in the ground. That's fair, isn't it? Well, not fair. That's clarity. Okay. My colleague that I teach the ranch practicum with, Aaron Berger, he was John. Okay, he was sitting on the ranch, went and got a master's degree, was working for Extension, had a conversation with Dad. Dad, I want to come home. I want to be involved in the ranch. Dad said, okay, I raise these kind of bulls. I calve this time of year. I do this thing. This is how the ranch runs. And Aaron says, well, I'd really like to do it this way and to try doing this and do. Dad said, no, I'm 65 years old. I'm going to do it this way till the day I die. And Aaron said, dang, Dad, I'd really like to come home and be a part of the ranch, but I don't want to do it like that. I'm going to go do something else. So he has to work with me. But I think that was clarity. Okay? And Aaron had made a decision. John and Betty have a decision. Yes, sir.
We've talked about Bill and John. Now what about Joe?
Yeah. What about Joe?
He's been left out.
Yeah.
He's got a
He was
career,
the
he went in the
Peace
Air
Corps.
Force. And now he's governor of Wyoming.
So how do you deal with a ranch that has a couple generations there? There's maybe another family that's wanting to come back and set up a business enterprise on the ranch. Here's the financial situation of the ranch. We've made a spot for John and Betty on doing the traditional parts of the ranch. How do you deal with that when another family member wants to come back, but yet the cash flow is not there to support that family? Does anybody have some strategies for that?
Halon Enterprise is what you gotta do.
Oh, what?
A Halon Enterprise, which is the outside. You go outside and take something that you can do as a ranch to increase the income, to make room for that.
What was the word?
Halon, Halon.
Halon Enterprise. Okay, so does the main business subsidize this one in the short term? Is it?
With, it doesn't cost the business to subsidize it, but because of the, and that's like ecotourism or any other thing.
Okay.
Because they have that land base, he can work with the tourism. Joe can bring, which he has to bring, $50,000 into that thing and set up the business, because the ranch can't afford to do it. He brings that and sets it up, but they use their existing assets to make that business a success.
I like that.
Shouldn't that be like outfitting or?
Yeah, any number, yeah, exactly.
So what would the conversation be between Joe and the decision makers on this ranch? What, would there be terms laid out on the front end? Okay, Joe, we're gonna let you set up your natural beef business. We're gonna let you live in the bunkhouse. We're gonna pay the utilities on that. We're gonna, you come eat with us once a day or something. So we're essentially giving you a $20,000 a year subsidy, but for how long? Before your enterprise is expected to return. Everything he brings in, does he keep, or does he?
See, in reality, you gotta look at all three of the siblings, and say, is Bill and June making more than John and Betty? Okay, say they're making 40K working outside. John and Betty are only making 20K. Do they really think that there's somehow 20K more is owed them and gonna come out of the inheritance? Or did they take the job for less because they're happy working at home? Well, when Joe comes along, and he hasn't done anything at all to contribute to anything, then he has to say, I owe nothing, I get nothing, I start with nothing. And even the subsidy, Bill and June are gonna say, wow, you can't subsidize Joe, because you aren't subsidizing us. I mean, in reality, Jake should be sending, if he's gonna give Joe a $20,000 subsidy, he should be sending Bill and June a $20,000 subsidy, and John and Betty a $20,000 subsidy.
I think those are interesting questions.
It's all still coming out of this operation, whereas Juanita over there is not reinvesting,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Well, part of the thing with Joe though is if he's bringing in a separate enterprise, he's using up land that Jake's cows could be on, he's using water, he's using grass, there's no way unless it's just absolutely written in stone before he ever sets foot on it to account for that stuff.
We haven't used that term, but I think that's something that was coming up in this idea here with John. And you said it, if Joe hasn't been back doing anything, this whole idea of sweat equity and how we might deal with that and who gets what, and Andrew's idea. Let's take a break from this for a second, and because I think this has a role in it. Let's stop thinking about this ranch and let's think about Ford Motor Company, or another big one. Okay, how are they structured? Who's at the top?
Somebody named
Board of directors, right?
Okay.
Yeah, board of directors.
Okay, we got a board of directors.
Really?
Chairman.
Is there really one of those, or
Huh?
is there really one of those for that range?
Well, I'm talking about Ford Motor Company.
Yeah, we're-
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like, wow.
We made a big step. Okay, who does the board of directors hire and fire?
President, CEO, and
Yeah.
CFO.
Yeah, the CEO. Okay, who does the board of directors answer to? Shareholder. All right. So who does the CEO appoint, hire, and fire? Who are his main guys?
Officers.
Officers. Okay. Now we're going to go back to a ranch. For a ranch situation, what are the primary duties of the officers of our ranch? What kind of functions need to happen on this ranch to make this thing a living, breathing
Management,
business?
financials.
Farming.
Financials. Okay. Financials.
Operations.
Production.
Production.
Obviously, I want two more because I drew go forward the line.
On-staff lawyer.
What do we have to do?
family members.
Once we raise it, what do we need to do?
Sales, marketing.
Marketing. What's all this stuff over here? Who we hire,
HR.
who we fire. HR.
You don't have any fish with a lawyer.
That's what I said, you tell me you're a lawyer with
That's
me.
right up there.
Yeah,
That's the CEO.
Accountants, accountants
You
giving
got
it.
CYA,
What's the
you got
CYA?
CYA over there.
That's right.
Covering
Cover
your
your
ass.
ass.
Yeah. HR.
Need one of those today.
So CYA for this.
In compliance, you forgot compliance.
Compliant, yeah. So you see where I'm heading with this, right, guys? As you look at this, is there a spot for something like this on a family ranch? Especially when you have something like this. Okay. Where does Juanita fit on this chart? Cheryl. Okay. Might she sit on the board of directors?
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably would if she's a 50% owner in the business, unless maybe she appoints somebody to sit on her behalf that maybe is a little more aware of
Her
ag
account.
businesses. Yeah, this accountant, hopefully not.
Is she a 50% owner of the business or just 50% of the land?
50% of the land business.
Land.
Yeah. Okay. Who's the CEO of this ranch?
Jake.
Jake. Okay. So right now Jake is sitting in this chair. What's that?
Probably Jennifer.
She works in town.
It's more like a regular ranch. Who's actually
She
calling
got a
the
job in town, right?
Jake/Jim. Oh, Mark.
With health
now.
insurance.
What's that?
Health insurance.
Health insurance.
Town job.
Okay, let's think about that CEO job for a little bit. In agriculture, how do we select our CEOs? Who's going to be the next CEO of the ranch? Who's the next CEO of this ranch? Heir apparent. If you're looking at this from the outside in, probably John.
I don't know about that.
We
You
don't
might
know.
look at,
Now, knowing
Bill
the
might be
details we
getting-
know, we might kind of think, well, this ranch is going to go broke before they're the
Bill
next
might be a
CEO.
lot better manager than John.
Joe's gonna say, don't worry.
Might be Joe, huh? Yeah. How do we generally select our CEOs in agriculture?
Land, family.
Two,
Bill male.
it's generally birth order and last name are the two criteria we probably put more weight on than anything. Which of those criteria have the most to do with that person's aptitude to do the job of CEO?
Either one of them.
Neither.
Okay. That's a hard truth, isn't it? Okay. What can we do to improve that? If we hope our kids will carry on our legacy, which I understand. My heart's in this business too, guys. What can we do to improve?
Education.
Yeah, education. What'd you say?
Clarity and a plan.
Clarity and a plan.
One thing we don't know too
Yeah.
is how lacking in talent is John.
Right. Yeah.
And ambition. He stays there because he probably couldn't work for somebody.
That's right. And that, from Jane's seat, I think that's an important thing. Sometimes people in this seat are looking over saying, you don't deserve anything else. You've been given a job your whole life when no one else would hire you. Why do you deserve more inheritance than I do? You've taken off this ranch. That's all you've ever done. People in John's seat generally see this as becoming a valuable part.
Bill might be sitting in the position where he's going, I've gone out and worked for somebody else and proven that I have the skill set to do the job. And I would probably be better at that job than the others just because I have the skill set to do it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Bill may be running a very profitable operation
Right.
because Bill's a genius.
If this negative number continues over here, he might be the person put in
And
it.
he was good enough to work outside.
Yeah. There's a lot of tough things we're bringing up here. I'm glad it's our neighbor's ranch we're talking about, not ours. Okay.
You know, it's probably time to, as you're thinking about this and your ideas, it's probably time to point out the time to have these discussions is now or 10 years ago in this case.
Yeah.
But it is not the worst. When is the worst possible time to have this discussion?
Right after Jake died.
Right after Jake died.
Well,
Or stepped away from the ranch, or when John comes in and says, you know, look, this didn't work, I'm doing this or I'm leaving, or, you know, I mean, and when do we do it 90% of the time? Right, we do it at that time, right, exactly.
Crisis
Well,
management.
did you say this is based on a true ranch? I wasn't.
Oh, shit,
It could be, yeah.
I got that one right there. Add 3 more brothers and sisters and a couple more kids. And
Who should I change these names to,
sure.
right?
No, I mean, what I was saying was, wouldn't this discussion at some point when Jake inherited the ranch, I mean, I find it kind of hard to believe that Juanita wouldn't have had an accountant at that point, trying to get some of these details, at least as Juanita was concerned.
Generation.
Doesn't matter, the will.
Depends on the generation.
The will dictates, they probably said share and share alike, 3 kids. That's probably his will.
And Juanita probably would have been happy to cash out. but the money's not there. We've got some friends back home
Yeah.
that inherited a seed company,
I bet you would.
and they finally just sold it. Mr. Mike is 65, his sister's 60. They finally sold it for $100 million. Trying to come up with $50 million for him to cash out to give to his sister and to, they couldn't cash out. It's not that he didn't want to cash her out, and it's not that she didn't want to be cashed out. It took them 20 years to find somebody to buy the seed company.
Well, I just wasn't in here, so I didn't know if Jake and Juanita just now inherited, or if that's just an ongoing
10
situation.
years ago.
10 years ago, yeah.
Well, that's what I was
The
saying, I
problem
think it would have been
is
addressed.
Jake's dad was the sole owner. And Jake's dad never planned for succession because he didn't need to, because he just said, oh, well, whatever, I'm just gonna drop dead. And every one of these, when you have a company that's sole owner, it's on Jake's dad to have done all that communication and all that stuff, and he chose not to. And part of it's generational, and part of it's the way the world was back then. So today, all of that seems like we can lay it all on Jake's dad, and we can, but
I think
when you get to Jake and Juanita, they need to say, okay, Dad didn't do squat, we better do
we
something.
better do something, yeah.
And you try to keep it within the family, which causes the cash flow problems. I mean, Juanita could go out and find somebody else to buy it, but then she's forcing Jake and the rest of the family into a 50-50 partnership with somebody based solely on money.
Why would someone buy half of a failed business?
They're buying the land.
It's value, one year of negative income.
They'll
doesn't
buy
mean
half the
failed
land,
business.
but you can't sell the land without wrecking this business, and this is a failing business.
Yeah.
Some people come in and buy half businesses and wreck the business, and that's what you're trying to avoid.
Yeah, that's insane.
They might come in and
Nobody will
pay.
buy half.
Let me, this is awesome discussion. I wish we had another hour.
Woody Bartlett could buy it, see?
Who would?
Woody Bartlett.
Woody Bartlett?
Yeah.
My neighbor down there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He could buy that,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it'll become just a part of that place.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me share some ideas with you guys. We got 10 minutes left here. My ideas aren't right. They're suggestions. A lot of these things come from the Ranching for Profit School. Okay, this is a way of laying things out. They came. It's not really a developed concept, but it's something they present. I think they do an excellent job of organizing it. What I think this organizing your business and having some clarity in who's in which role is paramount. Okay, who's on the board of directors? Who's the shareholder? How are the board of directors going to choose the next CEO? If we want it to be John, the best thing we can do for John is to give him the training in each of these 4 areas so that if we were to advertise this job for CEO, he would be the best qualified candidate and the person we would hire regardless of his last name and birth order. Okay? I think that's what we could do for John if we wanted him to be successful. Who's currently the vice president of production on this business? Probably John. Who's currently the vice president of financials? Maybe it's Jennifer. Okay? I think we need to be clear about who's doing those roles, what's expected of those roles, and pay those people fairly for the job that they're doing. Okay? If we are asking Jennifer to be our vice president of financials, and at our quarterly board meetings, the financial reports are in disarray, they're not accurate, they're not very good, then we need to relieve her of those duties and the salary that comes along with it. Okay? In our ranch practicum school in Casper this year, we had a gentleman in there that's the owner of Wyoming Machinery Company. Great person. He's got a ranch up in Buffalo. And he just talked about the succession of that business and how Caterpillar's only allows families to own these franchises or these deals. And they essentially help them create this and walk them through so that it's more likely that business remains successful. Okay. Fortunately, we don't have that in unfortunately, we don't have that in agriculture, but that's I think what we need to make here, those kind of things. All right, so, and he made the statement, he said, business is business and family is family, and we treat the two separately. When we have business meetings, there's family there, but we're talking business. When we have our family functions, we don't sit around and say, well, look at the financials of the ranch this year, guys. You know, hey, let's really talk about how we lost $44,000 this year. Okay? We enjoy being together as a family. I think that was important. This idea of sweat equity, I think we can take that off the table if we pay people fairly. Okay? Don't pay these people $20,000 a year for doing a job that would cost you $40,000 to replace if you had to go out and find somebody that wasn't your son or daughter to do it. Pay them fairly. It may not be entirely with cash salary, as I think you were suggesting. It might be with some, hey, we're gonna pay you $30,000 and then you're gonna get to run cows on grass worth $30,000. Okay, we're gonna give that to you. So now we're paying you a fair market wage for doing the work you're doing. I think that'll take this idea of sweat equity off the table. So if John ever leaves, hey, we paid him fairly the whole time he was here. We don't owe him anything, okay? He's free and clear to go do what he wants to do. What else do we want to talk about? This is awesome, this Halon Enterprises, I never heard that term. I think, as long as we're giving, again, clarity. Hey, you've got 3 years to make this business financially contribute to the bottom line of this ranch. We expect at the end of those 3 years, at least $30,000 generated to the net of our ranch business. With that expectation, we're willing to subsidize this for 3 years going in, because we realize businesses aren't profitable the minute they hit the ground. And we're willing to subsidize it with free housing, whatever it is. Put it on the table, be clear about it.
But
At the end of those 3 years.
Joe has to come in with something besides just his body.
Mhm.
You can't step into a business and say, and that's what everybody wants to do. They want to buy a service station, they want to borrow it all. They want to buy a video store, they want to borrow it all. They don't come into it with cash.
Yeah.
Joe has to come in with
something.
something besides just him.
If I hit that power button,
Should.
turn it on. I think you're right, yeah. So, but I think, again, clarity is the deal there. And you're absolutely right. That's what he owes this family here, is just some clarity. Here's my plan. I'm gonna be here till the day you put me in the ground, guys, and I'm gonna do things exactly the way I wanna do them. The Juanita deal, I think this would be a tool we could look at doing. We could look at developing some of these non-ag land enterprises. If she is a half owner of the land business, I think she's probably entitled to half of the gross income from the land business on a cash lease deal. The cows are paying to graze this deeded land in the way that we've worked out the business here, okay? One interesting thing is there's separating the production business from the land business creates a lot of value in these kind of things, okay? Just like somebody suggested Juanita should take a share of this $44,000 hit. If she has no input on the production business, she probably should not share in the losses of that production business. Okay, just like if it has a really, really good year, they're probably not gonna go to her and say, oh, we're gonna up your share to $300,000, okay, yay. They're just gonna keep that.
And if she took half of the land net, she'd be getting half of that 41, and the ranch would really be operating at a $65,000 loss,
That's right.
which
That's
is
right.
not, it's not even transparent there because it's not accounted for.
That's right.
There, yeah.
And I think we need to recognize too, this is just the grass from the land. In most ranch businesses, that makes up a small portion of the gross income from a land business. Okay, we need to look at those other potential enterprises on the land and find ways to capitalize on those. So I think we could hit that. If we were aggressive managers, I think we could pay her $250,000 a year and go on down the road. Yeah. Here's something else I wanted to share with you. Oops, let's see. Okay.
Just a comment.
Yes.
On a 300 cow outfit, you can't pay that kind of money.
Not with just money from the cows and the land. No, I agree. Not with just the cows and land. We're gonna have to do something else to make
You
that.
gotta have that gravel pit.
That's right. We gotta be aggressive about development of it. And maybe she'd settle for, we should go in and negotiate with her in good faith and see what she'd be willing to take. All right, here's the way this thing really hums, guys. If John is our vice president of production, Jennifer's the vice president of finance, we've got somebody looking at all of our marketing options, and we've got somebody dealing with the HR and things. When we have a family business meeting, we look to each of those departments and we expect a report, okay? So we sit down and we say, all right, guys, it's time for the monthly family business meeting. We're gonna go talk about the production side. John, it's 2012. We've really had a tough year. 3 months ago, we had this meeting and we decided we were going to keep the cows together at a significant financial loss to the business. We recognize that. What's our situation now, John? So we might turn to him, and I think we need these kind of things on these family business meetings. Okay, report back to the management team from the VP of production. Drought plan for 2012 is underway. Ranch decided to keep 80% of the cow herd, which means purchasing approximately 2 tons of hay per cow at a cost of $400 per cow. Okay? Preg rates this fall were at 89% or 5% below target, and calf weights were light this fall due to early weaning. Range is now in poor condition in most pastures. Cows are currently in good condition with average body condition score of 5.5. what I need from you guys as the vice president of production is we need to have a business management team discussion about our drought management decisions looking into 2013, okay? This is where we are right now, guys. What are our key decision points tied to those months? When April 1 rolls around and we have low snowpacks in the mountains and low soil moisture, what are we gonna do? Let's write it down right now, okay? That's what John should be demanding of the rest of the management team, okay? I would hope the CEO is going to say, oh boy, okay, Jennifer, you're the vice president of financials. If we have to sell off another 20% of our cow herd, I want you to see what our tax implications of that are going to be in 2013. We need to be looking at these markets. Where are they getting rain? Where's the demand for cows? If we are looking at another 20% reduction come April 1, where are we going with these cows? Let's be investigating that, because we might have to make that decision. We need to be talking about HR. If we're reducing this ranch down from a 300 cow ranch to a 100 cow ranch next year, who's going to get a job in town? Okay, that's an HR decision. All these recommendations come back up to the CEO, who then says, okay, here's all the information I'm given. I'm going to the board of directors with this. Okay, I'm going to go make a call to Juanita, and if she's on the board, hopefully there's some other people involved in this on the board. Hopefully there's some outside people on the board. And here's the plan, CEO to the board. This is what we're going to do April 1 if it doesn't rain. Okay. Do you see the power in that management structure? I think it provides clarity to the people involved. That kind of structure provides John the skills and the openness in these different areas to someday be successful in this role as himself, if that is his desire and the desire of the ranch. Okay. I think that is hugely powerful in management decisions of the ranch and personnel development and openness, these kind of things. We need to have a discussion about that on Joe's business idea. What are we willing to contribute to this? Okay, all those kind of things. Updates from Joe quarterly as to how his plans are going to fit into the production cycle of the ranch. Okay. So those are some things I hope to leave you with. Again, my ideas aren't right. Every ranch is different. I hope, if nothing else, we've thrown some things out on the table that have challenged your thinking, inspired you to make some of this happen. And I think this word right here hopefully is loud and clear. I think that's what is owed to these next generations. Yeah.
You know, I think at some point too, with those 4 areas, you need to reach out to Bill and June and Joe and say, can you sit down with us and discuss HR? Can you sit down with us and discuss all this stuff? And it can't just rest on John and Debbie as filling, you know, or even Jennifer for filling all those 4 roles.
Yeah. I bet in most ranches, I bet you they would be on the board of directors. Jane, maybe Bill, in some instances, Joe, I bet you those folks would be on the board of directors.
Right, but they also need to be down in the lower level to where they have an understanding of what decisions are coming up to and why.
Yeah, I agree.
Only if they're intimately involved to a degree in the function of the ranch would they be involved in the lower spot. If they're not, they don't have a vested interest in the daily operations. I'll take Bill and June as an example. We assume that they come over to help, but is it with a vested interest in making the ranch work, or is it just because they want family interaction? If they have a vested interest in seeing the ranch produce, they definitely sit in the board of directors and in the chief officer area. But if they're just coming over as part of family just to pitch in, then they shouldn't be involved with that business decision, because then they increase the murkiness of the situation. So it kind of depends on how they want to be participating in the ranch.
But if they want to contribute to HR in declining revenue times, if they want to contribute more to HR, then they should be in that.
Right.
They should say, well, just come on a Sunday, I'll come on a Saturday too, for it does extra time to help. That's why they could be in the bottom discussion. Or marketing, you know, Bill might know a heck of a lot more about marketing and say,
right.
Let's sit down with John and John, I got some ideas of what we need to do on marketing, and here's what works for my ranch.
Yeah.
Here's why I still have a job.
That's an idea. Absolutely.
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Dallas.
thanks you guys. I appreciate all the interaction. This was awesome.
If you would, please fill out the comment form. It really is very beneficial to us, helps us out. If you would.